Nicole, good afternoon.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm fine too. I need to have a consent with you. It's about our Canadian food studies assignment in school.
Mhm.
Is it okay if I will interview you today?
Yes, it's okay.
So I have a question with you. Can you please tell me your full name?
My full name is Nicole Lynn McLeod.
Okay. Who gave you your name?
Actually, funny story, I'm adopted, and my name actually came from my birth mother.
Does it have a special meaning to you?
It does have special meaning to me because I was adopted. I have met my biological parents, and just to know that that's the name that was given to me at birth is special to me.
Okay. Where were you born?
I was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia, on the east coast of Canada.
Oh, I see. Wow, that's a good place, right?
It's very nice there, yes.
Okay, can you please describe your family?
I have a very, very, very big family. Lots of uncles, lots of aunts, cousins, second cousins. Since being adopted, I've moved to Toronto with my new family, and it's a lot smaller. Just me, my mom, and my sister.
What place you grew up?
I grew up in Toronto.
In Toronto.
I was adopted about a month after I was born.
I see. All right, so the next one is, do you know your family's cultural heritage?
I do. We are French Canadian. We also have German roots through my grandmother's side.
So can you please tell me about your favorite food?
Oh, my favorite
When
food.
you were a child.
When I was a child.
Yeah.
We didn't have a lot of money growing up. My mom's a single parent. So a lot of my favorite meals were homemade meals. One specifically, it doesn't sound very appetizing. My mom used to call it slop.
Slop?
Yes, it's actually goulash, which
Goulash.
yeah, it's like a Polish, I think, dish. But it's just a mix of macaronis and meats and a lot of vegetables, like a gravy almost. And that was a staple in our home.
So do you like it or?
My tastes have changed since growing up, but as a kid, I remember having that a lot, and I did enjoy it.
So compared today, what is your favorite food today?
Ooh, my favorite food now. I'm very cultural. I love that Toronto has so many things to offer, so I like to try new foods. So I'm really into Mediterranean, Greek. I also love Chinese food. It's one of my favorites.
Chinese foods. Okay. So next question is, what did your family typically eat in breakfast?
Breakfast, it depended on the day. On weekends, we had a traditional breakfast, Saturday, Sunday. Mom would wake up, she would make eggs, bacon, toast, like a continental type breakfast. During the weekdays were a little bit different for us because I had daycare before school, and it was the daycare that fed me Monday through Friday. So it was whatever the daycare was serving, probably cereal or oatmeal or something along those lines.
That will be your breakfast for the week?
For the week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for lunch and for dinner, can you please tell me?
Lunches during the week, when I was a kid, for school, my mom would make sandwiches. Sometimes I would get leftovers in the thermos from whatever we had the night before.
That's for lunch?
For lunch.
Oh, how about the dinner?
Dinner we always had at home, always home cooked meals, like I said. There was always a meat and a side dish and vegetables. So a typical meal in my home for dinner would be maybe chicken, rice, and carrots or corn, for example.
Wow. I think dinner is a heavy meal because there's a chicken, rice.
Yes, dinner was always the biggest meal in my home during the week because with the daycare we'd only get cereal, and then lunch I would just have a sandwich or so on. So mom always made sure that dinner was a nice heavy.
Where and how were meals served and eaten?
They're always at home for the most part, aside from when I was in school during the week. My mom would treat us every payday for her, so every 2 weeks we would go out to a nice restaurant or something as a treat.
How often did your family eat at a restaurant or fast food outlet?
My mom was paid every 2 weeks, and she would always treat us to a meal out.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the only time we really had any fast food.
Okay, so do you remember which fast food did you eat?
Well,
Most
sometimes it
often.
would be like typically McDonald's or something like that, or a
McDonald's.
pizza. We would order a pizza.
Mhm.
But we did have a special restaurant that we used to go to every once in a while as a treat. So.
Yeah, can you please tell me the name of the special restaurant?
It actually, so it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but it was called the Organ Grinder. It was downtown.
And downtown.
Mhm.
Wow.
It was like my favorite restaurant growing up. We always got pizza when we were there. They had really, really good pizza. The thing with that restaurant, I don't remember so much the food because I was so young. What I remember was the atmosphere of the Organ Grinder and being with my family. But you're probably not familiar with the restaurant.
No.
But they used to have, it was literally, there was a huge, massive organ in the corner, and it played while you ate.
Organ, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like there's some music in the background. Right?
Kind of. It was kind of eerie and stuff, but yeah, it was a really nice place to go. I enjoyed it.
Can you please tell me about your favorite memory from your childhood involving food?
I guess would be going to the East Coast for holidays, Christmas specifically. Because the foods on the East Coast are very different than the foods I would eat here. The East Coast, they have a lot of fish, and they do a lot of hunting. So every holiday season, my grandfather would go hunting, and he would catch rabbit, and he would make rabbit for Christmas Eve dinner.
Did your family have any unique food traditions?
Aside from the rabbit, probably not so much. I do remember my uncle catching a deer one, and we barbecued that up, and that was really good. Traditions other than that, I mean, typical Thanksgiving and Christmas turkey dinners, stuff like that, but nothing really out of the ordinary.
Do you have unique food traditions for religious observations or?
Okay, so so the rabbit, for example, we would do on Christmas Eve. That, or we would do sometimes lobster on New Year's Eve, because lobster is also very big on the East Coast. And we have a cousin who's a fisherman, so he would catch us fresh lobster, like really big fresh lobster.
What has been handed down from generation to generation that will be passed on to the next generation connected to the preparation of foods?
I think the big thing for me is growing up, I remember always being involved with the food prep with my mom, which was important, I think. So she would have me do things like wash the vegetables and cut the vegetables when I was really young. That is something I would probably take down with my kids while they're growing up, because I believe family is really important, and doing things together is a really good way to bond, and something like that is irreplaceable. When you have a busy day and your parents are at work all day, and then they come home, they have limited time with their kids before they have to go to bed. So to involve them with the food prep rather than sticking them in front of a TV, for example, you have that time to really connect with your family in that little time frame during the week.
Who prepared your family meals?
It was mostly my mom. Sometimes my sister, because she's a little bit older than me, so by the time she was a young adult, I was still a child. So she would sometimes make stuff if my mom had to work late. But
can you please tell me about your family's kitchen that was different from your kitchen now?
Our kitchen growing up, very small. We live in an apartment in North York. So it's very narrow. It's a very narrow kitchen, not a lot of room for prep. Compared now, there's a little bit more space. It's a little bit more open concept. We have an island for preps.
Do you have a family garden or farm?
Unfortunately, no. I wish we did. As far as a garden goes, just recently, because we still live in an apartment, we have an arrow garden now. So we can plant, right now we're doing a bunch of different lettuces. So we're experimenting, but the lettuce is amazing and it grows really fast.
Yeah, wow. Can you please describe me where your family got groceries that were considered staples of meal in your home?
Typically, growing up, we would get our groceries from the local grocery store. we live at Bathurst and Finch, so there was a small little grocery store across the street. That's where we would get our daily stuff like milk and bread, stuff that we had to replenish often.
Okay.
As far as big groceries, we used to go to a grocery store. It was called Dominion, which I think is actually Metro now.
Did your family preserve any food for storing?
We didn't preserve food ourselves, but what we would do growing up, because my mom, again, being a single mom, was on a fixed budget, raising 2 kids. So when there was a sale on canned goods or jars of stuff, we would buy in bulk, and we have a storage closet that we keep all that stuff in so that we always have when we need. Which is good too, because you never know in an emergency, for example, like COVID,
Yeah.
and you can't get out to get foods,
That's right.
then you have that stock in your home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time and have one food from your childhood that you can get now, what would it be?
I can answer that in 2 parts. One would be the rabbit. Unfortunately, my grandfather has passed, and he was the one who was hunting the rabbit and preparing it. So we don't have that often anymore, not that home-cooked rabbit. Also, there used to be a restaurant here when I was a kid. It was called Lime Ricky's, and I really
So
enjoyed
where is it located?
it. Was at near the Center Point Mall at
Okay,
Bathurst and
yeah,
Steeles.
I know.
It was a nice restaurant, just an old school 60s vibe with the jukeboxes and all that stuff. Family type restaurant, but I used to enjoy going there as a kid.
Can you please describe the changes in people's diet that you observe in your lifetime?
As a kid, parents being so busy, food prep and meals were easy things, fast things. Nowadays, I think people are a little bit more food cautious and diet cautious, so they're buying more whole foods and more natural foods opposed to the processed packaged stuff. Me, myself included, I've done the same. I like to buy fresh vegetables, and I don't buy the frozen stuff anymore. I don't buy the canned stuff for salt content, etc.
Okay.
Especially, my mom is diabetic, so we have to cook differently in our home anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which changes do you think have been right? Which has been wrong?
I think there's been a lot of good. So like I said, I stopped eating processed foods.
Yeah.
I also do more of a low carb diet.
Low carb.
So I don't eat a lot of pastas and bread anymore because they don't sustain you during the day.
In what ways do you think about food's availability where you currently live?
The food availability is really good. As far as grocery stores and stuff go, what I wish is that I lived in the country where there was more farms and stores that carry homegrown foods or homemade jams and stuff like that. You don't see a lot of that in a big city.
For the last question, is food healthier or less healthy?
I'd say it's almost even, except for as a kid, I mean, we did eat a lot of bread and pastas because they're cheap and easy.
That's right.
But that being said, as a kid, I still had a very good balanced meal. My mom always made sure that we had a balanced meal, so not too many changes.